good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time zone you were in. And welcome to Iwahime. I'm excited! So, as you know, when they cry games are like off limits to stream for the most part. But I've always wanted to stream RYUKISHI07 written game. And Iwaihime is pretty much the only one that you can like stream all the way through without like issues. So I'm very, very, very excited to play Iwaihime. I'm so excited. I know nothing about the game. I read one chapter of the manga. So I'm going in pretty blind. Make sure you check the content warning in the pinned comment of the chat. Content warning contains explicit violence, blood and gore, crude language, partial or veiled nudity, sexual themes, including allusions to sexual assault, suicide, and references to alcohol or drug use. I'm pretty sure that the Steam version is a bit more content friendly. As you know, Steam censors their games, so I'm pretty sure we'll be okay. I do have a censor. As you know, my regular censor. We'll bring that up in case there's anything nitty-gritty. Yeah. Hi, Lily! Yeah, I'm playing Iwaihime. I saw that you were playing as well. But yeah. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Alright. Let's get into it, everyone. Ooh. And here I figured he'd be the one embarrassed to show up late. I let my enthusiasm get the better of me and arrived too early. I would have felt guilty otherwise, making him wait at some station he'd never visited after the long trip. Can I adjust how fast this goes? Yeah, there we go. Let's do that. Okay.
Susumu, 背はどのくらいあるのかな? 写メじゃよくわかんないよね.
Susumu was my distant relative. Like me, he was 16 and a junior in high school. Starting this spring, he would be living here in Susuda, going to the same school as me too. He said he'd know where my place was, but normally you pick people up at the station, right? Still though, that was no excuse for my premature arrival. She's so cute! Oh my god, her little hair accessories! He seemed like the punctual type, so I figured he'd be more likely to get here 5 minutes ahead of time. There was no way he'd show up an hour early. Yet I had to go and get the brilliant idea to show up over an hour ahead of schedule anyway. My dogs are barking, sorry. I wasn't trying to get that carried away, but honestly, it just kind of happened. Killing time at a chic coffee shop would be ideal for this sort of situation. But well, I didn't want to waste over 300 yen of my meager allowance on a single cup of coffee. So there I was, leaning against a pillar in front of the ticket gate, looking like a fool as I stared off into space. Hold on. Why are they barking? Anyway. At first I was worried about my hair looking funny, like I was waiting for my first date or something. Those silly feelings passed after a while. Eventually I found myself simply staring blankly at the bustling crowds of people, my mind as blank and staticky as a TV tuned to a dead channel. No matter how much I checked my phone, it wouldn't change the fact that I still had another 50 or so minutes to go. It'd be nice if I could find a game or something to pass the time. But since I was still recharging MP in Wanyadora, I couldn't play it for another 12 hours.
駅ってさ、何気に超メジャーでポピュラーな自殺スポットだと思うんだよね。
Whoa. All of a sudden, my channel locked onto a single voice speaking amidst the crowds. The voices appeared to be that of a young office worker all by herself, perhaps talking on the phone.
どんな自殺の名所もさ、結構行くの大変じゃん？覚悟とか度胸とか、というか行くのに時間かかるっていうか。だって思わない？富士の樹海とかで死ぬ人ってどんだけ頑張ってるわけ？樹海までの行き方調べて、電車乗って、乗り換えて乗り換えて、歩いて歩いて。普通死ぬためだけにそこまでやるかね？家で首つった方がどんだけ楽かって思うでしょ？
It was so bad. The one about the twin sisters, I hated it. She was discussing a rather morbid topic with the same energy, one with the latest fashions and trends. That said, I had to admit it was fascinating.
首吊るのだってそうそう簡単じゃないって。首を吊るロープかその代わりのものなんてそうそう家にはないよ。
Whoa. Now that she mentioned it, I couldn't think of anything at my place that could support my weight. Going to the store to get a rope or something just to hang yourself seemed like a real fast way to kill the mood. Yeah, even just hanging yourself took effort.
自殺ってさ、初恋の男の子に今だって告白するような勢いとタイミングでするもんでしょ?
That was quite the smile. Or simile. It was simile. It was in no way a funny topic, yet I almost giggled. Just girly things! The days of seppuku were long in the past, so most suicides these days were done on impulse. With that, I saw what she was getting at about train stations being suicide hotspots.
駅ってさ、学生でも社会人でも誰もが日常に利用している場所なわけだよね。それでホームで電車を待っている時間ってどんなに忙しい人でも自分を顧みるいい時間になるわけじゃん。
She has a point. This is so morbid. And so in those few minutes waiting for the train, it could cross your mind how easy it would be to just end it all. Train platforms were truly a wonder in that sense. If the thought of killing yourself passed through your head, you wouldn't even need to prepare anything special. All it would take is a few steps towards the edge of the platform. Sure, you'd have to wait for a train first, but those arrive every few minutes during the busy hours. A desire to die and a few minutes of spacing out, that was all you needed. And it was all just a hop, skip, and a jump away.
ね？最高の自殺スポットだと思わない？コンビニやカラオケくらいに身近でお手軽なカジュアルな自殺スポットだと思うわけ。
This really is morbid.
疲れたらコンビニで栄養剤買ったり、カラオケでストレス発散したりとかするでしょ？駅もそれと同じじゃないかなって。
So in other words, when you're tired of life, it should be okay to treat the idea of killing yourself almost casually. That's what she was saying. Suicide was supposed to be really tragic and serious, right? Yet this woman was talking about how death shouldn't be considered that big of a deal. Like cutting your hair short for a change of pace or splurging on a fantastic overseas vacation. In other words, resetting your life should be treated just as lightly as all of that. I didn't know if it was because I was sleepy or what, but her words felt like they were awakening something awfully new and fascinating inside me.
そうだよね。自殺って何もとことん追い詰められるまで考えちゃいけないものではないのかも。
Whoa. Like how you might just change up your hair after a breakup. Or how you might treat yourself to a makeover or a new purse on a whim. Maybe it really should be treated as casually as that.
自殺って言葉が私は物騒だと思うんだよね。
確かに。
エステで新陳代謝を改善して、新しいお肌に生まれ変わらせるのと全く同じ感じ。だから自分殺しなんて物騒な言葉じゃなくて。
If you knew you would become a ghost upon death, would suicide seem more appealing? I don't know.
人生のリピュアとかってどう
I'm
か
kind
な。
of scared of dying.
ね、なんか素敵な響きになったと思わない？
人生のリピュア。
Yeah, that did have a real nice ring to it. It was only then that I realized the woman had been talking to me. She was leaning against the other side of the pillar. I turned around and locked eyes with her. She was an older woman in her 20s or so, with stunning long hair and a somewhat compassionate aura around her.
してみると結構驚いちゃうよ。ああ、こんなに簡単だったんだって。なんで今まで無駄に怖がってたんだろう。バカみたいって。
したことあるんですか？
She answered as if I had simply asked for the time. Wait, hold on a second. I felt as though my entire world had been turned upside down. I grew as dizzy as if heaven and earth had been inverted, and the sounds of the crowds around me grew deafening, as though someone had turned up the volume on me. Whoa! All of a sudden, I found myself at the very front of a crowded platform, beyond where the waiting line would usually start. I wasn't even a full step away from going over the edge. There was a sea of people behind me. It was as packed as a can of sardines. Trying to force them back did no good. And if I tried to push my way through them, they pushed back just as hard.
見て見て、下を。
I heard the woman close by, but I couldn't see her. I didn't plan on listening to her, but a push from behind instinctively drew my eyes to my feet. I was stunned by what I found. Where there should have been gravel and train tracks was instead a vast blue sky spreading out as far as the eye could see. Beautiful fields of clouds adorned that light blue sky. It was like I was looking down from a floating island. No, wait. Those clouds seemed familiar. They were just like those towering cumulonimbus. I ruined the mood! Clouds I'd seen one summer when I was a kid, lying on a field in a nature park. That's right. There wasn't a sky below me. The sky I'd looked up at on that day was under my eyes. And just as soon as I realized that, I felt as though gravity had been turned on its head. My chest grew light with the desire to be sucked into that blue ocean. Like that feeling you get when you finally reach the top of a tall slide after waiting in a long line.
おいでよ。
でも
すっごい簡単であっさりだよ。怖くなんかないから。なんでそっちにこだわってたのかバカみたいになるよ。
I need to take a sip of your water. The woman appeared before me, holding her hand out to me. I had no idea how she got there without me noticing. Almost like she'd walked up to me as I lay gazing at the sky on that field, inviting me to go with her. And it wasn't just her. There were other women there, her friends, her co-workers maybe, along with men in suits. Though it felt like they were inviting me to barbecue or something, they looked so out of place in the suits that it felt kinda silly to me.
でもこれって
Jumping off the platform, right? But there was an announcement signaling the arrival of the next train, and yet everyone was coaxing me over to them, their faces plastered with blissful smiles. Almost like they were telling me I'd miss the train if I didn't hurry. But couldn't they hear that screeching of metal against tracks? The train was coming. I couldn't jump. If I did, I'd...
ほら、早く。怖くないから。痛くもないんだよ。
Hurry. Hurry. You're going to miss it. Everyone said that as they reached out and waved to me. Like telling me I'd miss out on all the fun if I didn't come along. They were asking the impossible, because... And they all been crushed to pieces. Their hands, feet, and heads were all crushed to pieces, weren't they? There was no blue sky, just a blanket of scattered stone dyed reddish-brown by the elements and rust. Faded metal rails like prison bars reaching out into the distance. It was from there that the dead moaned, pushing through the track blast as they desperately reached out to me. Their own buried hell beneath its stone, its residents doomed to be crushed under the weight of each passing train, unnoticed by the living day after day. The mutilated dead moaned there in agony as they desperately sought new companions. One of them had become nothing more than a partially crushed head. Another's outstretched hand had fallen right off their arm. An indecipherable jumble of hands and feet squeezed through the stone as they beckoned me over. Chills ran through me from head to toe. Why are my dogs barking now and trying to set the mood? I wanted to back away, but the sea of people behind were pushing back just as hard against me. No, even harder. Stop. I'm gonna fall. However, they were clearly winning. My toes had already stretched out past the platform, and were trembling in midair. I stretched my arms as far as they could go, grabbed onto someone behind me, and held on for dear life. but the encroaching wall of flesh kept pushing. By this point, my heels were already halfway over the platform. The eyes of the mechanical carnivore gleamed as it grew closer. The train rushed forward, crushing the moaning dead underfoot as it did. The screams of the damned joined in chorus with a metallic screeching as the train approached with its fierce velocity. It'll swallow me whole if I don't get out of the way. But just then I found myself dancing in midair. At that moment, the stone graveyard of the suffering dead suddenly transformed into that magnificent sky once again. I couldn't tell if I was falling or floating. Congratulations. Congratulations. Everyone stood on that field of grass under the sky, their arms raised as if in celebration, waited for me. I fell gently into their clutches. Almost like I was light as a feather. Their countless hands caught me comfortably.
ね、怖くなかったでしょ?
Whoa.
ようこそ私たち側の世界へ。あなたと一緒に来れて嬉しいよ。
Oh. I didn't mean to press that. I was trying to escape. There is no pain or suffering here. Nor sorrow, nor anger. No irritation or frustration either. They're all things of the past here. Of course, the same goes for hope, salvation, resurrection, and rebirth. Transient illusion was all a lie. The sky, clouds, field, and people who'd welcomed me all vanished. I was lying on the rails, bound tight by the countless hands. That's right. I was a sacrifice to the steel behemoth. My body was gnawed down to nothing by the jaws of the train in the blink of an eye. All my bones broke with a sound akin to the crunching of a candy bar. I heard that with the ear remaining on my severed head. Naturally, not even my severed head could escape those steel jaws, of course. Who would have thought that sound could be music to one's ears? What a pleasant sound, like sinking your incisors into the skin of a crisp, candied apple. It was a bit of a surprise to discover how gratifying it was. To have my body devoured. Deep down, I understood it was an evil, detestable temptation. But being so thoroughly gnawed at was a sensation both satisfying and amusing beyond comprehension. You know how it feels good when you're stretching and you feel your joints crack? Well, try picturing that, but all over your body, like goosebumps, and it keeps happening over and over again. Then you might understand. I knew, of course, that I shouldn't get into that kind of pleasure. But by that point, my body had been reduced to little more than an assortment of paste and limbs strewn across the rails. What little there was left of me was being dragged under the track bed. A world of crushed limbs and innards. But it seemed that wasn't enough to kill them. Agonized moans filled the air. I understood. This was liberation. I didn't have to remember my day-to-day life any longer. I didn't have to keep spacing out and waiting without end. Waiting? Hold on, why did I come to the station again? Oh well. Who cared? It didn't matter anymore. Oh, another train was coming. The wheels of the train crushed hundreds more limbs and torsos and organs. A blinding light gradually intruded on my ecstasy, and all traces of thought came to an end.
大丈夫?
Tsubakiko panted as she returned to reality. She was leaning against the pillar in front of the station waiting for Susumu. That was still the same. But one thing was different. Time had advanced to the point of Susumu's arrival.
うなされてるみたいな感じだったよ。
そうだった。
We're fine.
寝ぼけてたかも。
Tsubakiko gave a slight nod as she suggested that perhaps she'd been spacing out for so long. She'd had a waking dream.
大丈夫？
The
少
music.
し休む？
Blah.
大丈夫大丈夫。本当ちょっとぼんやりしてただけ。
何か悪い夢でも見てた？
Dreams can sometimes be so clear that they feel real when you're in them. Yet in most cases, you barely remember what they were about the moment you wake up. Bakiko couldn't put it into words. All she knew was that it was a bizarre, grotesque daydream. She couldn't recall anything more than that. But as she stared at Susumu's face, her mind started clearing up. She could feel herself returning to reality, the daydream being driven away in a flash. She'd already completely forgotten that fantastical delusion that had taken hold of her. People don't tend to retain every detail of the daydreams or fantasies they might have when spacing out, after all. Fantasies like that happen all the time.
ごめんね。ちょっと早く来すぎて、ぼんやりしてるうちに居眠りしちゃってたかも。
どのくらい早く来てたの？
I too daydream about the end.
1時間くらいかな。
それはすごいな。
別に鈴夢のためにってわけじゃないわけ。
Tsundere.
たまたまちょっと早く来すぎちゃったってだけの話。
Relatable, don't we all?
細かい
Yeah.
こと気にしなくていいの。
キコちゃんは面白いな。
田舎者の鈴夢が駅で迷子になってたら気の毒だなって。それで早く来て待ってたわけ。Do you understand?
迷子になったら来るのは早まるんじゃなくて
Why are we
遅くなる
speaking
と思うけど
English?
な。
荷物はそれで全部？カバン1個持ってあげるね。
あ、大丈夫だよ。
Country boy, I love you.
No problem. うわ
Tsubakiko snatched Suzumu's travel bag out of his grasp, only to drop it to her feet with a thud.
何これ、めちゃくちゃ重いじゃん。
だから重いよって言ったのに。
鈴夢が軽そうに持ってたからてっきり軽いんだとばっかり。ひょっとしてリュックの方が軽かったりする？
大丈夫だよ。それにこのカバンより重いよ。
By the way, Shiki, you can turn off the text sync in settings. Oh, I can? No. Cancel. How do I... Wait. Oh. Text speed... Oh. Off. Okay. Okay, we're good. Thank you.
鈴夢って結構力持ち
Thank you, Lily.
さすがは男子。ああ、そっか。武道をやってるんだったっけ？
まあ腕だけは鍛えてるからね。
Ah, he's just like me. I have a lot of upper body strength.
昔と変わらず一見細そうなのに随分成長しちゃったね。
キコちゃんこそ実際に会ったらこんなにも可愛らしく成長してたんですっごい驚いちゃった。
そうありがとう。お世辞でも嬉しいかな。
お世辞
Lift
なん
me,
かじゃないよ。
Shiki. I'm on my
キコ
way.
ちゃんはすごく可愛らしくなったと思う。
ありがとう。
I read that as bottom, not button.
キュートキュートになるよ。
I work hard every day to be cute as a cute little bottom. Oh, I forgot to read that part. Her heart was all aflutter at the thought that Susumu might turn out to be one heck of a lady killer. Whoa. His full name was Susumu Susuhara. Just like Tsubakiko, he was 16 years old and in 11th grade. He would be going to the same school as her starting in April. As per family tradition, he would start living on his own from this year onwards. His large backpack and traveling bag contained his personal belongings and the like. That said, he was still a minor, so it wasn't like he could be truly living on his own just yet. The Harumiya, Tsubakiko, and her parents would be taking care of him. Susumu and Tsubakiko were relatives. However, they were 6 times removed, so they could hardly be considered close in terms of blood ties. What's more, the two hadn't seen each other since their great-grandfather's funeral over a decade ago. Their parents had told them each how the other was doing, but this was the first time in so long they were truly meeting face to face. Despite that, they didn't feel like strangers at all. Family ties truly are a curious thing. Even if today had been their first meeting, Tsubakiko wouldn't have been opposed to welcoming him into the family at all. It was strange, but that was just how close she felt to him.
じゃあ行こっか。
なんだろう。
The station employees were in a fluster. The teenagers exiting the station were rambling on about something, their faces pale.
飛び込みらしいよ。それもたった今だって。
That could have been us!
何それ。怖い。
髪の長い若い OL が
Oh,
電
the
車に
lady
飛び
from
込んだって言
before!
ってるね。
An office lady in her 20s with long hair.
やだ。怖い。
気の毒だね。死んで咲く花なんてないのに。
ルピンかも。
え？リ何？
なんだっけ。
For a moment, images of a field under a blue sky and a woman with an unsettling smile slashed through Tsubakiko's mind. They faded into the fog of oblivion just as soon as they had appeared. After all, it was pointless to remember daydreams. Whoa.
ここがキコちゃんの住むアパートなんだ。
She's so cute! My father considered living alone to be a trial of sorts for me. For generations, men of the Susuhara family had lived independently after reaching a certain age. Only once one had trained his body and mind without relying on others was he considered a full-fledged adult. I'd eagerly awaited this opportunity for as long as I could remember. That was when I'd studied up. That was why I'd study up on all sorts of things in preparation for this day, so I could live on my own. The thoughts of finally being able to put all that to the test excited me beyond words.
はいこれ、スズムの部屋の鍵。2階の202号室ね。
ありがとう。僕だけの家か。
Kiko's family, the Harumiyas. Oh, Kiko being Tsubakiko. Her full name was Tsubakiko Harumiya. Anyway, Kiko's family, the Harumiyas, were landlords who owned several apartment complexes in Susuda. This quaint 2-story apartment complex, Residence Harumiyan, this too, was one of them. And I would be living here. I opened the door to find a futon and stacks of cardboard boxes containing daily necessities waiting for me. The delivery men had already made their rounds.
それにしてもずいぶんいろいろと送ったね。男子なんてせいぜい身の回りのものをカバンに詰め込んだらおしまいかと思ってたな。
自炊しなさいって言って母さんがフライパンとかお鍋とかも送ってくれたからね。
スズム、自炊なんてできるの？
うん、多少はできるつもりでいるよ。得意って胸を張れるほどじゃないけどね。キコちゃんはお料理とかってできるの？
こう見えても将来の夢はプリティな花嫁さんだしね。
Our wife, perhaps.
花嫁修行の一環としてお料理も欠かさずお勉強してるの。へへへ、 デリシャス
She's so
デリシャスな
cute.
手料理で
I love her outfit and her
鈴の
little hair
納得しちゃうよ
accessories.
へえ、それはすごいや。今度ぜひご馳走してほしいな。
任せて。私も男子の舌に合うかどうか試したいと思ってたから。
Kiko nodded along, her eyes gleaming and her smile beaming. It seemed she'd been looking forward to living near a boy her age, what with being in the midst of adolescence and all.
ちなみに隣の201は私の部屋ね。壁薄いからね。聞き耳立てて乙女の秘密を聞こうとしたら血祭りにしちゃうからね。
しないよ、そんなこと。
I mentioned it might be easier to unpack with a box cutter and scissors. So Kiko left the room saying she'd go get them. With the bright and cheery Kiko gone, a somewhat chilly stillness filled the room. The place hadn't been renovated, so there was faint traces of the previous owner's existence still lingering about. Replacing that with my presence and making the place my own would be among the great pleasures of living alone. But until then, I just had to put up with a bit of discomfort. Just then, long black hair gently tickled my cheek. No, it was just some falling dust. I looked up to the ceiling. Discovered it was pitch black, like someone had painted it with soot. It fell gently, black snow. When I came to my senses, I found myself in a pitch black cloud filled with that falling snow. I couldn't see a thing. However, I could sense many presences. At that moment, I thought I could hear a female voice reading out something like a sutra at length. The voice sounded youthful, but I couldn't see her anywhere. Instead, a giant turquoise object shaped like a spindle, heavy and covered in rust, came into view. It felt like the voice was coming from within it. Many people were sitting around the object. The lights of many candles flickered about, giving the affair a ritualistic atmosphere. Candlelight danced in a cloud of black soot, illuminating the massive conical mass. I could hear the woman reading, praying, singing, inside it. I couldn't help but wonder what in the world that thing was. My eyes were gradually drawn into it. The woman's chants broke into coughs from time to time. My heart wrenched at that sound. It felt like I was going to choke in the cloud of soot as well. Before I knew it, that bizarre object loomed over me like a massive mountain, and swallowed and squashed my consciousness whole. Hey! Title sequence. Do we get an opening? No. Susumu Prefectural High School, Class 2A. My class. Originally, the plan had been for me to transfer here a year ago, back when I was starting high school. But my mother fell ill just before the entrance exam, so I had to stay and help around at home. As a result, I was delayed. She eventually returned from the hospital with a clean bill of health, and so I finally started attending the school 1 year later. At first, I was worried a transfer student like me would attract all sorts of attention and have a hard time. But since there were so many students at the school and I transferred in right at the start of the school year, no one noticed. That was to be expected. The freshmen had 8 different classes, so there was no way the students would know everyone in their grade. They all probably figured I'd been in a different class last year, just some classmates they hadn't bumped until now. So no one had any reason to think I was a transfer student unless I told them. That made things much easier for me. What's more, every day at the school wasn't just easy, it was actually pleasant. As for why, well, first of all, Kiko was in the same class.
社会眠いよね。眠すぎて授業が終わってもスリスリスリーピーだよ。
ノートちゃんと取ってた？テストに出るって言ってたよ。
え、そんなこと言ってた？
よかったら僕のノートを写す？
うん。スズム、サンキューサンキューだよ。よいしょ。スズムのノート
何？字汚かった？
女子力
Ooh, he has girly handwriting.
なんでこんなにふわふわに書いてあるわけ？
そうかな。子供みたいな字で恥ずかしいよ。
Cute.
あとイラストいっぱい、吹き出しいっぱい。ここはテストに出るよ。ここがポイントだにゃ。
Meowmerize.
何これ、高すぎる。女子力が高す
Oh
ぎ
my god, he's a femboy. Compared to mine, Kiko's handwriting was rather dull and simplistic. Her boredom with school was palpable from her notes alone.
すずむ、あんたのノートいくら出したら
Whoa.
私のノートってことにしてくれる？
ダメだよ。勉強は自分で書いて覚えなきゃ。
Not necessarily true.
勉強はどうでもいいから、あんたの女子力少し私に分けなさいよ。これ鈴原くんのノートなの？かわいい、わかりやすい。
Lol. For some reason, girls had always liked me, not like I had a clue why. But I had guy friends too.
さすがは鈴原。相変わらず
You
グ
escaped
レイ
from
トな
Persona 4?
男だぜ。光と影あらば男と女あり。グレイトな男になるためには女子力も必要ってわけだな。
それは誤解だよ。
いいや、謙遜するな。俺はめめしいなんて思ってないぜ。お前のグレートな全てを吸収してやる。
So his name is
Miro!
Natsuya.
俺のノート。
うわ
Natsu proudly displayed his notebook filled to the brim with drawings. Though it looked like he had more drawings than actual notes.
汚い落書きでいっぱい。
Lol.
グレート可愛いだろ。俺も自分の中に女子力が眠っていたのかと驚いているぜ。
かわいいな。これライオン？
惜しいな。それは猫ちゃんだ。
Technically, lions are cats. Meow.
私には四足獣であることさえわかんないんだけど。
イラストがいっぱいで楽しいノートになってるね。
俺なんかまだまだだぜ。必ずスサラの域にグレートゾーンに達してやるぜ。
Oh my god. This was Natsuya Atsuta, my best friend. He was a very unique and funny guy. I don't know why, but he'd taken a liking to me ever since we met at the opening ceremony.
ハルミヤも俺に女子力で負けてるようじゃまだまだだな。
あんたにだけは言われたくない。
あのさ、よく二人が僕に女子力って言うけど、女子力って何？
説明の必要はねえ。ススハラのグレートな一面の一つに過ぎないぜ。
Knuckle pop.
大体ね、スズムは生まれてくる性別を間違えてると思う。私が女子力を身につけるために日々どれだけ花嫁修行してると思ってんの？
そうだな。日々修行だぜ。俺ももっと可愛いイラストでノートを埋められるよう修行するぜ。
あつたくんはちょっと黙ってて。でもススハラくんってすごいよね。
I like the way he rolls his R's. I can't roll my R's.
武道やってるんだって。すっごい強いらしいよ。
当たり前だろ。あれでなよなよしてたらただのオカマ野郎だぜ。
He's a thirsty little flower.
ススハラのグレートなところは男としての強さを持ちながら
Nailed it,
女のような
thanks.
繊
I
細
know,
さ
I'm
を
pretty
合わ
great.
せ持つ
I'm
と
kind
こ
of
ろ
a
さ。
big deal.
確かにすっごい腕力だよね。ずっと鍛えてるそうだし。
それだけじゃねえ。あいつの拳を見てみろ。
Hmm?
あれはかなりグレートな修羅場をくぐった拳だぜ。
これはちょっとささくれちゃってて。
Lotion. My father ran a martial arts dojo. As a result, he had trained me ever since I was little. Said training involved punching trees, wrapped in straw, and the like, so my hands were pretty roughed up. Though I guess that might have made me stronger than the average person, too. On the first day of school, I'd accidentally made eye contact with Natsuya and he challenged me to an arm wrestling match on the spot, which I won. Afterwards, he said that was the first time he'd lost, that I'd caught his eye, and so on. He'd been fond of me ever since.
俺もススハラの親父さんの道場に通って鍛え直されたいぜ。そしてグレート夏也に生まれ変わって悪を拳で打ち砕きて。
うちのは武道とは言っても戦う武道じゃないし。
そうだよな。武道は戦うためのものじゃねえ。
So true.
守るためのものだもんな。それでこそススハラ、やっぱりグレートな男だぜ。
He's so spirited.
ありがとう。
見てなさいよ、スズム。次の授業はめっちゃ
Oh, they're
キュー
cute.
トなノートを取って
I wonder what will happen to
私の
them.
女子力を証明してやるんだから。
あら、可愛いイラストがいっぱいのノートね。
Hello, ma'am.
誰のノートなの？
うわ、雛形先生だ。次補体だぜ。
雛形先生、これ見てください。男子の文才でこんな可愛いノートが取れるなんて。
そんなに可愛く描いてるつもりはないんだけどな。
Is this guy like the perfect protagonist type? Oh no! We got a Gary stew on our hands!
ススハラ君はお勉強を楽しんでるから、それがこういう形で現れるのね。
What a cute visual novel. Everything will be
何も
totally
塗ってない
okay.
食パンと同じなの。そのまま食べても味気ないのは当然。そうで。
確かに。あのクソつまらねえ社会の授業はそのままじゃ干からびた食パンも同然。
その授業にこの可愛いイラストで彩りを添え。
そうしたらもっと社会の授業好きになれるかなって思って。
味気ない日常に潤いを与えるのもまた素敵な女子力だと思うわよ。
私も頑張って身につけます。
さすがはススハラだぜ。やっぱりグレートだぜ。
そんなにみんなに褒められることをしたつもりはないんだけどな。
そういう気持ちで書いたから素敵なのよ。もしこれが可愛さアピールで狙って書いてたら、ススハラ君はとんだ腹黒作詞ね。
作詞？やっぱりこれも計算なのか。やっぱりススハラはグレートだぜ。
よくわかんないけど褒めてくれて嬉しいな。
Ah, yes, what a wonderful cast of characters who I am certain nothing bad will happen to.
あんまり褒めてる部類には入んないと思う。
ほら、チャームよ。みんな着席して。
It's time for class!
次は先生の楽しい保健体育の
Super
時間よ。
duper fun health class!
雛形先生の授業は楽しいから好きだな。
先生は男子に人気あるからね。
Health class was the one class I got bullied the most in because I snitched on some guy for stealing a binder. And I was called a snitch bitch for like the whole semester.
当たり前だぜ。あの中には男の夢とロマンが8切れんばかりに詰まってるんだぜ。
残念でした。正解は脂肪と乳
Bad
腺です。
in memory glands!
さすがキコちゃん、勉強してるな。
Susumu couldn't be happier with his school life. He'd integrated perfectly into the class and each day was just as satisfying as the last. It wasn't just Susumu either. Everyone in the class was happy. They were basking in the glory of their adolescent days. Suzumu's classmates all took their seats as they reluctantly ended their conversations. Everyone bowed as commanded to by the class representative, and the once lively classroom fell silent yet again. The silence was abruptly broken by the sound of the rear door opening, attracting the attention of the entire class. 2A was a class where anyone could enjoy themselves. Everyone there felt that way. But there was one person they all avoided. That someone was her.
黒髪さん、着席なさいな。ん？何？そう、着席して。ページは38ページよ。
Miss Hinagata smiled as she responded, but it wasn't like they were carrying on a conversation. Indeed, it was more like she was a mother responding to an infant's babble. The girl's name was Toei Kurokami. The only way to describe her would be a wonder. She staggered to the seat in the back of the class next to the window like a ghost. As she did, the rest of the class averted their eyes or pretended they didn't notice her. None of them budged in the slightest until they heard her take her seat. It bears repeating, but the only way to describe her would be a wonder. She always carried a Japanese doll with her and never let it go for even a second. There were whispers that it must be a cursed doll, whose hair grew longer when you weren't paying attention. That said, there wasn't anything wondrous about it. It was just an eerie doll. Many wondered if she was even allowed to bring it to school, yet no one said a word about it. What's more, Toei never let go of the doll, not even during classes. Yet no one said a word about it, even though she never held a pencil or opened a textbook. Even at that very moment, she just kept on holding the doll as she stared off into space. But Miss Hinagata didn't even try to reprimand her. That went for the other teachers too. No matter what subject they were teaching, none of them told her to put it away. Far from it, they said nothing even when she would suddenly rise to her feet and leave the classroom. She'd even done so that very day, staggering out of the classroom at the very beginning of social studies. Yet the social studies teacher hadn't reprimanded her, merely asked if she was going to the infirmary again. Her head was in the clouds, regardless of the subject. There was no way the school could allow that. And yet, full school allowed Toei Kurokami. The classmates would wonder if she was a ghost or if the teachers couldn't see her. The very notion was ridiculous, of course, but no one laughed. For they understood she was an ominous presence they do best not to get involved with. In spite of that, the class was getting used to her existence and strange habits. Why are they barking? This is a moment! Ah! Hold on. 1 second. Why are they barking? Why are they barking? Now is not the time. I should probably save though. Okay. I saved. Whoa. Let's see. 1 moment, guys. Sorry for barking, no problem. It's okay. We have to bark. April was almost at its end, and the whole class had already mostly stopped paying her any mind.
黒髪さんって不思議な人だね。
あの子はそっとしてあげて。
黒髪がスス校の入試で合格点を出せたなんてちょっと信じがたいぜ。
Forget passing. No one could even imagine her holding a pencil. Natsuya's comment was on point. It confounded the mind to envision how she had been allowed to join the school in the first place.
黒髪家ってこの辺りでは。
グレートマネーパワーで裏口って
Great
わけ。
money power!
そんなことを言っちゃ悪いよ。
But everyone thought so. No one believed she had been accepted through proper channels. The more one thought of her, the more of a mystery she became.
1年の時からずっと黒髪さんはこんな感じなんだって。人形を抱いたまま授業も受けずにぼんやりして。
それじゃあテストとか補習とか大変じゃないかな。
何もかも特例らしいぜ。補習にも出なくていいし、そもそもテストの順位表に名前も出ねえらしい。
What? How is she here?
私の聞いた子もそう言ってた。学校側からその存在を無視されてるって。
Indeed, they were ignoring her even now. The teacher should not have been able to see her from where she stood. Should have been able to. Yet she continued with the lesson like nothing was wrong. That was very mysterious and, depending on one's mindset, eerie. He didn't exactly have much in common with her, so Susumu hadn't really paid her any mind so far. Every school has its own troublemakers and quirky students. The types everyone ignores because it would be a pain to get involved with them. Toei was certainly occupying that role. That had been his only evaluation of her. But the more he thought now, the more conscious of her he became. Susumu had never felt this way before. It was bizarre. Making sure the teacher wasn't watching, he looked back at Toei. She was staring blankly at the ceiling. Yet for some reason, Susumu's gaze was drawn to her. It wasn't exactly love at first sight, but deep down, Susumu felt an unrest that was similar, yet completely removed from it. Was it anxiety? Or a sense of responsibility? A sense of duty that said he needed to do something, perhaps. Not even Susumu understood the strange feelings now roiling within him. Toei Kurokami. Just what was it about her?
ポツンと浮いててかわいそうだから声をかけようかなとか。
No!
考えてる？
Of course not, huh?
いや、
私はよした方がいいと思うよ。
目が合うと呪われるらしいぜ。
You guys are crazy.
そんなことあるわけないよ。
彼女のことを不憫に思って声をかけた女の子もいたって去年の話だけど。
その話俺も聞いたぜ。
それで、その女の子はどうしたの？
なんか精神を病んで最後には不登校になっちゃったらしいよ。
悪霊に取りつかれたとかで親と一緒にお祓いまでしたとかなんとか。
Bruh.
僕は信じないな。
I don't believe it. Bakiko and Natsuya's eyes widened.
確かに彼女には少し近寄りがたい雰囲気
Oh,
が
we're so nice.
周りの人がちょっぴり不吉な印象を持ったとしても不思議は。でもだからって面白半分に広まったに違いない。そんな噂話を真に。
ちょっとびっくり。案外進むって芯が強いんだね。
僕は人を見かけや噂話で評価しちゃいけないってずっと言われて育ってきた。僕だって僕のことをよく知りもしない人に外見や噂なんかで勝手に判断されたくない。小学校の頃は顔が女みたいだって言ってよくからかわれたんだ。体がなよなよしていて男らしくないんだろうって一方的に言われて。
それに関しては俺も返す言葉がね。
Natsuya also had been convinced Susumu was a weakling when he first met him. He challenged him to that arm wrestling match as a prank, only for his opinion to take a direct 180 after the boy had soundly defeated him. Now realizing why Susumu had taken up martial arts, Tsubakiko felt a little ashamed of herself.
周りの扱いが人を作ることもあると思うんだ。あの子だってひょっとしたら周りの扱いのせいでああいう振る舞いになってしまっただけかもしれない。
なるほどな。
話しかけたら意外にいい人かもしれないよ。
Even though it looked like they understood, it didn't seem like they wanted to talk to Toei Kurokami either way. Apparently, it wouldn't be easy for them to erase the sinister impression of her they built up in their minds.
なんだかそれが転校生の僕の使命のように思えてきたよ。
And they're barking again.
使命？またグレートなことを言い出すぜ。
I don't know what happened last year, but that may be exactly why I need to be the one who talks to her. A flame had been lit within Susumu. It was telling him to go talk to her. Perhaps there was something she needed as well.
では次のページを誰に読んでもらおうかしら。秋田くん。
あ、はい。
進むは偉いね。人の評価に惑わされず自分で確かめたい
Ow,
っ
I
て
hit
気
my
持ち
microphone, sorry.
すごく尊敬できるよ。
当たり前のことだと思うけどな。
でもね、進む。愚者は経験に学ぶって言葉。
Damn.
知らない。何それ？
私もどこの偉人が言った言葉かは知らないけど、愚者は経験に学び、賢者は歴史に学ぶ。
I'd never heard that before, but I could guess what it meant.
10階建てのビルの屋上から飛び降りれば死ぬ。でも鈴むはそれを自分で体験しない限り信じないって言ってる。 険を避けるために人々の累積した知識
And they're barking
歴史に
again.
耳を傾けるべき時も
そんな大げさな話じゃないよ。黒髪さんに話しかけたら僕が死んじゃうなん
That's
て
what you
あ
think.
るわけがない。
Well, let's do it anyway.
でもみんなが彼女を敬遠し薄気味悪く思い遠ざけるその蓄積された歴史を無視して我が身で確かめようとするスズムはひょっとしたら命知らずかもしれないよ。
It hadn't been that long since I'd reunited with Kiko, but I'd never seen her look so serious. It was a shockingly stern expression like the face a mother makes when scolding her child for trying to run out into the street when the light was red.
私の第六感的なも
I
のが
feel it in my bones!
スズムは黒髪さんとは関わらない方がいいと思う。
キコちゃん。
私止めたからね。
This is rather sudden. But my name is Yuto Akagawa. Not that you have to remember it, everyone only calls me by my nickname. What sort of nickname is that? Badigawa. If you ask the rest of the class about me, they'd say I was everyone's favorite laughingstock, the kind of person everyone makes fun of. You see those on variety shows all the time, right? Where the comedians get put through bizarre punishments and everyone laughs at them. Well, that was me. I was always the butt of such jokes. That day was no different. A comedian got stripped down to just his underwear and had embarrassing things written all over him with felt markers. The people on TV all had a good laugh. The viewers probably did the same. But I never laughed. I just felt sympathy for the comedian seeing them like that. No, not sympathy. Fear. Because I knew that would be me tomorrow. Whoa.
おいデブ、赤デブ、しりとりやろうぜ、しりとり。俺たち友達だろ。
Nar, not bullying.
遊ぼうぜ。
When lunch break came around, a bunch of crass guys would always force me to play with them. I was by no means popular. And though they called it playing, I was the one getting played with.
じゃあ俺から行くぞ。デブのブからな。ほらルだよ、ル。早くしろ。
54321はいデブの負け
I hate them! They were just looking for an excuse to put me through humiliating punishments for losing. It would go on until I lost, and recently they've been coming up with unfair reasons to knock me out right off the bat. If I didn't play along or if I showed any displeasure, they'd get really violent. So all I could do was force a smile and take it. Better to be their plaything than their punching bag. Yeah, this was better.
おいデブ、服投げ服。ほら早くしろよ。
See what I mean? I'd already resigned myself to this last night, so I was calm about it. They all tugged at my clothes, trying to force them off. It'd be a pain if I fought back only to lose a button, so I just gave an embarrassed smile and stripped myself. And once I was reduced to my briefs and shoes, they brought a marker out of nowhere. Called it. But it was an oil-based one. Getting this off wouldn't be easy.
大丈夫だよ風呂入れば落ちるって
It's harder to get marker off your skin.
うわ、お前汗ベトベトじゃん。
They wrote all sorts of nasty comments on my stomach, back, thighs, and even briefs. And then they cackled, just like the people on TV. But here no comedic music would play to soften the blow. My parents didn't care about me. Figures, given I was a wimp who'd been bullied his whole life. If they knew I was getting bullied, they'd just hit me and yell at me for being such a pushover. So I just put up with throw away my underwear and wash off all the writing in the bath so they wouldn't find out. But this trend just kept on going, and the crude comments on my body would escalate day after day. Worse, it's nearly impossible to wash off writing from oil-based markers. Water just doesn't cut it. You need to take a nylon towel and rub your skin really hard. As a result of doing this every day, my skin got raw and painful. It stung whenever the hot water touched it. That pain would serve as a constant reminder of how my body had been reduced to a sketchbook for bullies. Huh? All of a sudden the lights went out. It was pitch black. Oddly enough, my thoughts ground to a halt, as if time had stopped in the darkness. No point in getting worked up about it, my parents would surely take care of it. If I made a scene, they'd scold me for being a wimp who couldn't take care of himself. Just then, the shower stopped. It really did feel like time had stopped. What in the world was going on? All I could hear was the labored breathing coming out my nose. It scared me like there was a terrifying demon just nearby. Whoa. I heard a spine-tingling voice from the depths of hell at my back. It came from within the bathroom right behind me. The words lingered and echoed off the walls. Oh my god. Why are we relying on hell? I want power! I want power! I couldn't stand the humiliation any longer. Oh no! A trade! Ooh, let's kill someone. Oh my god. Cue the next scene where he walks up to our protagonist and is like, don't show up to school tomorrow. Normally, I could never give that ominous presence what it desired. But not only had it been yet another day of getting covered in embarrassing scribbles, some girls saw me and laughed this time. That bitterness urged me on. An elementary schooler was humming as he walked down the road, clearly in high spirits. The street was desolate. No one was watching. If I was going to do it, then this was my chance. I approached him from behind, aimed for the back of his head, and... Whoa. Fuck. I ran for the hills. The boy's cries chased me like a specter, but I ignored them and dashed away. There. I did it. That boy was hit by a complete stranger out of nowhere, bringing about that misery I'd given the thing would have wanted. I felt a little guilty, but that was outweighed by an overwhelming sense of triumph. Besides, it looked like that boy was coming from school in a good mood. If he was that happy, it was only fair he shared some of it with me. There was no need for me to feel bad, right? Happy now? Kept up my end of the bargain. I could hear the thing laughing in the distance. That night I waited in the bath for it to show up again, but it didn't. I kept washing my body and waited for the lights to go out again, but they didn't. My body stung. It was itchy. Even after I went to bed and turned out the lights, my chest and back kept aching. The next day, I checked my stomach to find it swelling all reddish purple. But if I told my parents and it came out I'd been getting bullied, they'd scold me. It was okay. It'd go away if I just left it alone. Yes. It kept throbbing during classes. I couldn't concentrate. Not like this.
お前風呂でちゃんと洗ってんだろうな。昨日背中のやつ残ってたぞ。
I was in for yet another scribbling punishment during lunch break. But this time the aching in my chest and back was more painful. The swelling there was chafing against my shirt. So having those guys take off my clothes and touch me would actually feel better. In fact, I just wanted to take my clothes off myself. It was itchy. Itchy, itchy, itchy. Itchy, 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 itchy. And when I took off my shirt, the swelling finally stopped itching. My chest and back writhed with pleasure. like worms after a rain. There were several purplish black swollen blobs pulsating on them, rejoicing in the fresh air. To me, they looked like one of those face assembly puzzles. Eyes, noses, mouths. Those scattered parts protruded from my chest when the blobs and trembled. A cloudy, stringy secretion similar to phlegm gushed out of them. The demon had certainly kept its promise. After all, the looks of horror on the bullies made it clear they wouldn't even think about touching me now. I'd wish to never go through something like that again, and the thing granted it. Seeing the bullies fall comically on their backsides in terror felt a bit liberating even. I was sure their days of bullying me were at an end. But all of a sudden they kicked me to the ground. They kicked the eyes, noses, and mouths of the blobs on my chest and back over and over again, crushing them into paste. The blobs would gush that snot-like secretion with each kick sticking like string to their shoes. As for me, well, I felt no pain. Far from it, I felt on top of the world for giving them the fright of their lives. Eventually they kicked me so much that my whole body was swollen purple and became a blob itself. And so they continued stomping me, crushing me flat as I continued spewing that gooey secretion. In the end, I was reduced to nothing more than a reddish-black puddle, like blood mixed with mucus, and faded away. Thus, they would never bully me again. However, I wish I'd been more specific with my wish. Like, I wish everyone who bullies me dies, or something. But if I had, I don't think hitting a kid in the head would have been enough to satisfy that demon. However, I made another wish. Kill them all. The demon's wish in exchange for that was surprisingly cheap. All I had to do was offer it the life of but a single student. Any student. But that was impossible. I no longer had a body. I couldn't kill someone, much less touch them. Hey, after hearing all this, you feel bad for me, right? Sympathize with poor old me and take my place. Sacrifice someone. Just one person is fine, okay? Come on. Please. Sacrifice someone for me. Come on. Please. Please. A giant lump of meat beyond any possible description writhed in the darkness. It had no arms, legs, or even a head, just a blob of flesh. Eyeballs, noses, and mouths poked out from all over, spewing forth gooey phlegm from time to time. It was creeping closer and closer, closer. Just then, red eyes flashed in the darkness. And it wasn't just two of them. Countless pairs of red eyes encircled the blob. They were small Japanese dolls. Endless numbers of the exact same doll clamored about. The blob found itself surrounded on all sides. Being dolls, they were completely expressionless. However, they clattered as they clambered over to the blob, one after another. By this point, the blob was nothing more than a piece of candy, tossed into a swarm of ants. It could no longer see anything past the oncoming incursion of dolls. It howled as it squirted out several strands of phlegm like a water gun. The blob was clearly screaming in its death throes. But much like the piece of candy amidst the swarm of ants, the doll showed the blob no mercy and devoured it whole. With howls and the occasional sound of spewing phlegm, the blob faded into the darkness. The doll sitting at Toei's side appeared to shake for a moment.
その人形マジでさ、大切な人形だからそっとしておけ。
You do not want to fuck with her, buddy. I'm gonna save. Yes. One second. Okay, there we go. Okay, I made sure I unmuted. Okay, cool.
うるさく言われてなかったら、そんな気味悪い。
OMG, toe and shoe. There was a wet sound followed by the sweet scent of saliva. Toei's lips shone centrally as a thin silver string trailed from them. And once more, she put the boy's toes right in her... What? What?
頭さえイかれてなきゃよ。結構いい女なのによ。やめんじゃねえよ。
What's going on? The boy kicked Toei in the chest with his bare foot. But like a dog, she groveled before him yet again. She started sucking his toes once more like a baby would its mother's breast. The school's bike lot was empty except right before and after school, and so it had become a gathering spot for delinquents. Thus, delinquent groups would often meet up here during lunch break and the like. About 10 of them were here at this moment. They would curse, spit, and tell each other all sorts of crude stories with deplorable smiles on their faces. A ways apart from them was their leader, Sho Kaminuma, getting his toes sucked by Toei Kurokami.
翔さんって性癖変わってますよね。
I feel not good.
ほんとほんと、足より舐めさせるとこがあるでしょうに。
俺はよ、そういうのは
I'm
きちん
saving
と
that
して
for
るわ
after
け。
we're married.
つうかさ、それで線香来た時、焦ってチャックで挟んだら笑えねえじゃん。歯をぶつけんなっつっただろ。
It seemed Sho had gotten the area under his toenail stuck in Toei's tooth while he had been convulsing with that. Ew. He suddenly roared angrily and kicked her away with his free left foot. Toei's slender body fell right over. Sho must have shown her no mercy. However, it seems she didn't even understand the cruelty inflicted upon her. For she groveled before Sho's foot yet again and started trying to suck his toes, her expression never changing even once. But Sho, fed up by this point, placed his foot on Toei's face and kicked her down again.
やめなよ。
Whoa.
ああ、
乱暴は良くないと思うよ。
なんだてめえ。誰よ。
2の A のすす払ってやろっす。
They hated it when outsiders stepped on their turf. So they frowned, rose to their feet, and glared at Susumu.
黒髪さん、嫌なことなら嫌だってちゃんと言う。それが言いづらいようなら僕が先生に相談するよ。
ああ、ちくりかよ。
No, not the snitch!
お前、チクった後どうなるか分かってんのか？あ？
おとなしくチャリに空気入れて帰れや、ボケ。
Susumu had brought a tire pump he'd borrowed from the superintendent's room. He'd come because his tires were low in air. Come to think of it, Kiko did tell me she wouldn't recommend doing it during lunch, didn't she? Now I see why. She was implying this place was a den of delinquents. Susumu was tense in his own right, but it didn't look that way. And that pissed the delinquents off.
あのよ、なんか勘違いしてるみてえだけどさ、トエはさ、俺にいじめられていやいややってるわけじゃねえわけ。なあ、トエ。
Toei staggered to her feet and stared blankly at Susumu. She wrapped her arms around Sho and clung to him with all she had. But her expression remained the same even then.
こいつはさ、俺の女なわけ。
自分の女に乱暴をするなんて思えないよ。
気を許し合ってるからこそってわけよ。お前何様？俺とトエがどういう関係か何も知らないなら、
女の子を蹴り飛ばしてもいい関係なんて僕には思いつかないよ。
Maybe she's into
おい、あんまふかしてっと死なすぞこら。
One of the delinquents stepped forward and grabbed Susumu by the collar. But Susumu simply grabbed his arm unfazed.
あ？
Yeah, kick his ass!
おい、大丈夫かよ。
いてえよ、いてえよ。すっげえバカ力だよこいつ。
It was at that point the delinquents noticed Suzumu's unassumingly rugged fists. The lack of fear he showed when faced with their numbers made it easy to imagine he was trained in martial arts. They glared furiously at Susumu but didn't try to grab him again. Just then, the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch break.
A 組の鈴原とか言ったか。てめえのことは覚えておくからな。
さっきの乱暴を黒髪さんに謝らない限り、僕も君のことは忘れないから。
ああ
Whoa.
なめてんのかてめえ、この場で知るか。ああ
Whoa. He hadn't imagined Susumu would actually talk back. Surging with white-hot rage, Sho pulled a metal bat out of a nearby bike's umbrella stand.
何やっとんじゃ
Whoa. Whoa, Susumu finally looked surprised when he realized that shout had come from Tsubakiko.
バキコかよ。
Bakiko.
てめえの出るわけじゃねえだろ。
スズムは私のダチなわけ。
Whoa.
血祭りにされていかこら。
Whoa!
できねえ玉なし野郎が。
潰すわクソはま。この場でぶっ殺されるかこら。
翔ちゃん、まずいって。落ち着けって。
Whoa.
面倒を起こしたら先輩に何て言われるか。
Shit.
命拾いしたな、鈴原。てめえ、マジで覚えてろ。
やく
Sho left in a huff as the other delinquents tried to calm him down. Toei staggered on after them.
黒髪さん、
But before Susumu could ask if she was okay, Toei pushed him away. And for the first time, the two looked each other in the eye. Though Toei's face was blank, her eyes were brimming with emotion. With tears and rejection. Her tears streaked downward and fell to the ground. Toei pushed Susumu away again, then left. Susumu watched her leave as he reflected on her parting words. She said that he knew.
さすがグレイトな男だぜ、セスハラ。あれだけの人数相手にビビりもしねえなんてな。さすがは俺が認めたグレイトセスハラだぜ。
敦田くん、一緒に来たのに隠れてたでしょ。そんなのじゃ彼女できた時愛想をつかされちゃうよ。
俺はまだ修行中の身だからな。女なんてまだまだ早えぜ。
He's gotta train before he can get a girlfriend.
ありがとうキコちゃん、助けてくれて。
ああいうバカを挑発するのはノンノンだよ。だから私、昼休みに駐輪場はやめた方がいいよって言ったのに。
ごめんね、昼休みがもったいないからって意味だと思ってたよ。それにしてもキコちゃんもかっこよかったよ。
そうそう、グレイトな短歌だったぜ。そうか、スサラは何しろ
No way.
ハレニアは中学の
Oh my god, was she a Yankee?
うわっ、
昼休みは終わったよ。早く戻ってレッツ5次元目をスタディしないと。
ナツくん、どうしたの？
さあねえ、
Learning sickness?
私が肩を貸すから、スズムは早く教室に行って。
Whoa. By the time class resumed, Kurokami was back in her seat, holding her doll and staring off into space like always. Why? You're too late. The way she was in class, I couldn't imagine her speaking her mind as clearly as that. I thought I knew what I'd heard, but I was starting to wonder if it was my mind playing tricks on me. Kurokami, what did she mean by too late? I used to be so indifferent, but I found that I couldn't get my mind off her for some reason. Too late, as in past the point of no return. But what? What didn't I make it in time for? Black snow started gently falling between us. No, not snow. Soot. Jet black soot piled up, burying me in Kurokami's world in darkness. The final class of the day ended and my classmates filed out of the room one after another. But instead I walked over to Kurokami.
何か力になれることがあったら言ってね。
何も。お前は。
遅すぎる。
Kurokami said nothing. That silence was a clear affirmation that by too late she was indeed referring to me.
わからないよ。僕の何が遅すぎたの？僕は非力かもしれないけれど、黒髪さんが苦しんでいるなら、それを救うことができるかもしれない。
Her eyes were glazed over. Nothing I said was getting to her. There was nothing more I could say to keep her there.
なんでもあの二人、いい名付け同士らしいぜ。
One second, guys. I'm gonna quickly save, and I'm gonna go get another bottle of water. So I'll be right back. I'll be right back. You guys stay here. BRB. I'm back with water. Let me take a sippy. A bunch of reading really wears out my throat. Alright, let me put my little blanket around and then we will get back to the game. Alright, here we go.
亀沼のやつがすすだに引っ越してきたのは中1の時らしいんだけど、あんなクズのどこがお眼鏡にかなったやら。
中学では有名だったぜ。いい名付けがいるやつがいるらしいってな。
どうして？
Sho Kamenuma had moved to Susuda only 4 years ago. On the other hand, the Kurokamis were a family who'd owned a lot of land in this region for generations. What could the two families possibly have in common? In contrast to the wealthy and famous Kurokamis, the Kamenumas barely had a penny to their name, to say nothing of land. But by that autumn, Sho Kamenuma was already engaged to Toei.
何しろ多感なお年頃だからよ。学校中で話題になったぜ。
あいつも最初はさぞや浮かれただろうね。でもすぐに黒髪さんがちょっと何のある子だと分かったみたいで。
どうしてあいつは、亀沼くんは言い名付けを引き受けたんだろ
う。噂が本当なら黒髪さんの一目惚れなんだって。
一目惚れ？
どうしても婿養子になってほしいって黒髪。
その際にとんでもない金を積んだって噂だぜ。それで亀沼のやつグレイトに羽振りがいいらしいぜ。
Toei Kurokami, she wasn't ordinary, that much was certain. It wasn't absurd to imagine her family going to great lengths to get her a husband. Still, though, that didn't explain why they'd chosen a boy like that, of all people. If they loved one another, then there'd be no issue. But it hadn't looked that way to Susumu at all. At the very least, Kaminuma treated her more like a pet than anything else. And it hadn't felt like Toei held any love for him either. Too late. Because Susumu had been too late, she'd been forced to accept this fate. It almost looked as though she'd resigned herself to that outcome, and suppressing her emotions had sworn obedience to Kaminuma as a result.
じゃあな、また明日な。
Bye! Natsuya waved goodbye to his friends in front of a deli in the shopping district. The shop's name was Atsuta's Piping Hot Deli. His family ran the place. Susumu and Tsubakiko waved back as they left. Hold on. I gotta... Come on. Let me... Hold on. I need to use a tissue. Ugh, I feel gross. Okay. I'm gonna save again. Okay.
黒髪さんに近づくのは良くないと思うよ。
どうして？
うまく言えないけど、良くない感じがするの。
そうかもしれないね。少なくとも彼女は救いの手を求めていたのだけは間違いないと思う。
進む。
それが良くない感じの雰囲気になって感じられるんだと思うよ。
進む。
キコちゃん。
私。
This sign means nothing. He can't read.
進むは黒髪さんに近づかない方がいい。絶対に何か恐ろしいことが起こるから。
どうしてそんなこと？
私の第六感。
ありがとう。用心するよ。
用心しながら近づくよって意味でしょ。もう知らない。
Tsubakiko stuck out her tongue and slammed the door to her apartment. I walked into my own apartment and closed the door. Entering my own space, isolating myself from the outside world, filled me with an odd sense of lethargy. Sure, it was a relief to be home, but I also had the strangest feeling that my door was like a portal to another world. Though it was warm enough to make me sweat a little out there, it was cool in my room. Almost like the place was too big for me alone. I didn't know why, but it felt like I'd been here on my own for a long time.
汗をかいたね。シャワーを浴びよう。
Shower! When I was alone, I tended to talk to myself to ward off the stillness of it all. Perhaps it was a bad habit of mine. I hung my school uniform up and entered the bathroom with a fresh pair of underwear in hand. The bathroom was humid when I went in, almost as though someone had only just finished bathing there. I picked up the scent of bath water. Had someone used my bath? Someone's scent was lingering amidst the heat. As it dawned upon me that I didn't recognize whose it was, I felt a twinge of unease. I slowly yet gently pushed open the door to the bath. And when I did, heat rushed out along with a sickening body odor. In the bath was me. No, it was probably a person. Something slovenly and obese, bringing to the mind a distended stomach bulging with fat and grease. Hi, Koyo! Curly black body hair peeked out between its swollen folds, filling me with disgust and revulsion. Blemishes and shaggy moles, crimson scars from scratching sweaty itches too hard. Skin as hard as scabs outside the joints, bruised blood vessels that wriggled like worms. And an acrid stench like sweat and candle wax that spread with the heat and clung to my nostrils. A blob of meat like an especially disgusting middle-aged man was sitting right there. All of a sudden it squelched and twisted. I couldn't tell what was its front and what was its back, but it was clear it had noticed me and was turning to face me. Its voice sounded like a man's voice put through a filter to protect his identity, like you'd hear on the news. I was sure its words meant something, but I couldn't understand it at all. All I could make out for sure was a spine-tingling laugh. Past the blob, I could see a bundle of black hair. It was a girl with long black hair and snow-white skin. No, a doll the size of a human. Its joints clearly indicated it was what they called a ball-jointed doll. The blob held that doll as it turned around. When I saw the doll's face, I couldn't help but gasp. Because that was Kurokami's face. It wasn't the face of a doll modeled after Kurokami. Everything from the head down was a doll. But the head itself wasn't. It was her face. Head. One of Kurokami's joints screamed with a sickening crack. I couldn't tell what the blob was saying, but it was obvious it returned its attention to Kurokami. The blob fiercely embraced the doll attached to Kurokami's head and greedily sucked on it. The ball joints creaked with pain and moaned in the exact same rhythm. Kurokami broke out into a cold sweat and gritted her teeth. She was clearly in agony. Yet, oddly enough, my heart felt relief in the face of that repulsive terror. The disgusting relief that the blob wouldn't do anything to me while it was busy with Kurokami. Occasionally there would be a crack, and one of the ball joints would bend in an anatomically impossible direction. Even Kurokami couldn't help but moan in agony. I couldn't even begin to imagine the harrowing pain she must have been in. I didn't know how long Kurokami would hold the blob's interest. But eventually it would get bored. When it did, I would be next. Part of me wanted to fight to save Kurokami. However, the grotesque blob before me and my fear were both so overwhelming. I didn't know what I could do against that thing. But I couldn't just ignore Kurokami's suffering. If I couldn't work up the courage now, I never would.
Kurokami-sanを離せ!
All of a sudden, the blob stopped. And then it slowly but surely turned back to face me. Fear and regret seized me from head to toe. There really was a fine line between courage and reckless naivety, wasn't there? The ability to feel calm and safe when faced with such terror was truly a luxury. The blob was surely laughing at me. It then stopped toying with Kurokami and tossed her in the hot water of the tub. Kurokami's body sank into the bath with a loud splash and vanished. What rose out of the water next wasn't Kurokami, it was a doll. One I recognized. The Japanese doll Kurokami always carried was floating there in the tub. Baba Booey. The blob didn't seem pleased by it. It groaned with discontent as it scooped up the doll and turned it around and around, studying it from every angle. That was probably my one and only chance. With the blob's attention off of me, this was my first and last opportunity to escape. But my legs wouldn't move. They crumpled beneath me as though I were a marionette. Of course, that blob was only playing with dolls, so even I was its doll too. Without even realizing it, my body from neck down had become a ball-jointed doll, just like Kurokami. The blob lurched menacingly towards me. It then lifted me up, placed me between its folds, and smothered me against it. The feeling of its curly hairs against me, its revolting odor and heat, and its sewer-like breath filled my throat with bile. The blob touched my ball joints and lovingly twisted them. From time to time, I felt them bend in ways they shouldn't with a crack. Though barely conscious, I could feel my joints bend and break into various directions, one after another. Finally, they all broke, leaving me nothing more than a head. Baba Booey! The stench was beyond repulsive. I felt like I was going to suffocate from all the nausea. Soon enough, the blob engulfed my head. Kurokami. I slowly sat up in the dimly lit bathroom. It was dark around me. Apparently it was nighttime. How long had I been lying there? I felt like I'd just been in the throes of a horrible dream. I exhaled heavily as if to drive out something disgusting that built up in my lungs. I could tell I'd had an awful nightmare, but couldn't remember anything specific about it. That's just how it is. Nightmares are vivid when you have them, but vanish with barely a trace once you wake up. Maybe I'd been anemic and passed out? I had no clue. The clearer my head got, the more I realized worrying about it wouldn't accomplish anything. I shook my head and opened the door to the tub to start a bath. Traces of warmth lingered still. There was no way anyone was there. My elbows and knees had been hurting ever since I woke up. I checked my elbows in the morning to find them a little red and swollen. Whoa. That night I had the strangest dream. It was of Kurokami sitting alone in a world of falling black snow. The black snow landed on the shoulders of her white robes, staining her in a monochrome gradation. She looked lonely, so I tried approaching her, but no matter how much I walked, she didn't get any closer. A firm and cool transparent wall was separating us. At the very least, I wanted to tell her she wasn't alone. I kept pounding on the wall and shouting at the top of my lungs, but she didn't hear me at all. Upon closer inspection, I realized tears were streaming down Kurokami's face. The black snow sullied her tear-stained cheeks and making it look as though she were crying lines of black. She was facing my direction, but it didn't seem she could see me. Perhaps the wall was only transparent on my side. If that were true, then she was all by herself within the wall, the black snow burying her whole. My heart ached at the sight of her tears. Was it pity? Sympathy? No, it was a sense of duty, no question about it. A baseless sense of responsibility telling me I had to save her. If I didn't, she'd be left alone in that world, doomed to be buried and fade away under the black snow, all the while shedding tears stained black by the soot. Even after I woke up, I just stared blankly at the ceiling for a while. This was the first time I'd ever remembered a dream so clearly. You're in love with her, bozo! I couldn't understand my own feelings. I wondered if maybe I was in love with her, but that definitely wasn't the case. That's what you think! I was an adolescent boy just like the rest. I knew the bittersweet taste of unrequited love. True, the fact that I couldn't get her out of my head was similar to that. But this was different. I just knew I had to help her. There was no time left, not even a second. And she said it was too late. Even so, I had to help her. Why? I didn't know. But that emotion was filling my heart and telling me I had to act as soon as possible. That peculiar feeling stuck with me even after Kiko invited me to go to school with her. I still couldn't get Kurokami out of my head even after we got there.
北上さん。
はい。
衣笠さん。
はい。
黒上さん。おう。黒上さんは欠席の連絡が来てますね。
Oh, she's absent. It wasn't rare for Kurokami to be late, or even miss homeroom. But even so, she still went to school every day. At the very least, this was the first time anyone had called in to say she'd been absent beforehand.
珍しいね。黒上さんが欠席なんて。
いいんじゃね？どうせ来たって勉強なんかしてねえし。
松田くん、そういうこと言わないの。鈴乃は黒上さんにすっかりご主人ね。
いけないかな。
あんな不吉そうな女に 隠れた魅力を見抜いたってことか。
Lol. Dude, he's just in the goth girls, god.
さすがスサーラ、やっぱりグレートな男だぜ。
もう好きにしたらいい。本当。
ハルミア、嫉妬は見苦しいぜ。
厚田くんは引っ込んでて。
そんなに黒髪さんに近づいちゃいけないの？
知らない。好きにすれば。今にきっとなんかバッドなことが起こるからね。勝手に呪われちゃえ。
大丈夫だよ。
I make sure to do my spiritual cleansing.
進む、その肘どうしたの？
I was getting a little sweaty, so I rolled up my sleeves. Kiko must have noticed my swollen elbow.
どうしたんだろうね。
痛くないの？
やめてよ。触られるとちょっと痛いよ。
そっちの肘もかばってるようだけど。
昨日の晩からなんとなく痛むんだよ。両肘と両膝が。
呪いだ。
大げさな。
黒髪さんの呪いが移ったんだよ。もっとひどくなっても知らないよ。
Whatever.
大丈夫だよ。放課後になってもまだ痛んだら
We're too
病院で
positive,
見
I
てもらう
think.
から。
どっちかっていうとお祓いだと思うよ。
Whatever, you're exaggerating. I only have a few minutes left, so I should head out. Have a good time, Shiki, and chat as much as you can. Thank you, Marte! Have a good rest of your day! I guessed it was just because girls have a thing for the occult. And if all the girls believed that, none of them would help Kurokami. So it really was all up to me. That strange sense of urgency was still plaguing me even at school. I once again wondered if I was in love with her, and yet again I came to the conclusion it was a sense of duty instead. But why? Why did I feel this way for a girl I'd never met before? Was it obligation, responsibility, sympathy, pity? No matter how many times I retraced the source of my emotion, it always came back to that baseless sense of duty. Even after lunch break, it had come and gone. I was still captive to that emotion. Whoa. What, you need someone to suck your toes every single day? Ooh. Okay.
翔ちゃん、大丈夫？
He's got the coof. The cough. Joe kept hacking and coughing as though he were choking on his own spit. His buddies kept rubbing his back with wry grins until he finally calmed down. Joe wiped his forehead to find beads of sweat. He must have really had it rough. Me right now. Luckily, I haven't gotten like a cough yet, despite it already being April. Jinx, I'm gonna get it this week before my trip.
知らねえよ。俺花粉なんかじゃねえし。
Oh no, he's got ligma! Joe spat in disgust and coughed up phlegm.
なんだよこれ。
うわ、なんだよそれ。
Oh, is it
めっ
soot?
ちゃくれ。
What Joe had coughed up was neither yellow nor white. It was black as tar. It was the first time he'd ever coughed up something like that. Ligmatose! Shocked, he spat again to see if more of that color came up. But what came out this time was the same colorless spit as always.
くしょ。なんだよな。
Lol.
つうかさ、朝から俺なんか調子悪いんだよな。
We got corpse party fluids!
熱もあんの？やばくね？
マジでだるくなってきた。
あんな気持ち悪い女に足なんか舐めさせてっから呪われてんだよ。
The delinquents laughed crudely. But Joe heard none of it. He was feeling terrible at the moment.
先生に言って
午後老けたら
つか横になりて
はははは。
ちょっぴりだけお熱があるよね。
Oh, so you did tell a teacher.
うっせえ平熱が低いんだよ
ちょっと横になってみて。様子を見てみましょうね。
Is this the demo or the full thing? This is the full
2
game.
を C だったかしら。先生に連絡しておくわね。
マジ
I found out that the publisher lets streamers play the whole game on stream now. They like changed their like policy for it. They made a tweet about it. Hinagata shut the curtain once she saw Sho get into bed. Once his cough subsided slightly, Sho took his hand off his mouth and found his palm stained black. Are you gonna make it a series? I want to finish it. This is a pretty short game to my knowledge. I think it will take like maybe 12 hours full completion. I think. Though the infirmary bed wasn't all that comfortable, she drifted off to sleep as though his consciousness had been swallowed whole. I'm kind of sucked into the game, so I really want to play it all the way through to see where it goes. I love Ryukishi's work, so... My knees and elbows were still swollen and throbbing even after school. Hold on, my ear is itchy, so I had to take my headphones off. Oh, there we go. So I decided to play it safe and go to the hospital. VNDB does mention it's about 24 hours on average. What? Iwaihime average time. Main story is 10 hours and 56 minutes. Main plus extras is 12 hours and 6 minutes. All styles 15 hours, 15 minutes. So it shouldn't be that long. According to this. But there's also a DLC, which might make it longer. Let's do it as a few parts. I'm more interested in how Ryukishi... It's because this isn't a When They Cry game. It's not like a 07th expansion game. Ryukishi just did the writing for the game. But it was made by like a different team. And it was published by a different team. So that's why streamers are allowed to like play this on stream all the way. And have like monetization and stuff. Yeah, Ryukishi just did the writing. And this isn't a When They Cry game or 07th expansion game. Yeah. Iwaimoto Hospital for Medicine and Surgery, located just past the Iwaimoto shopping district, was grander than I'd pictured. Iwaimoto was the name of the neighborhood I lived in. Iwai meant celebration, and seeing it around on signs always brightened my day. So although hospitals aren't always the happiest of places, Iwaimoto Hospital seemed friendly to me. The hospital was full of the elderly, just like the one where I used to live. I felt a bit guilty for going there for something as trivial as swollen joints. Those more visibly in pain deserved to be here way more than me. Right, just like that Whoa. That black-haired girl. It was Kurokami. No mistaking it. She was in a wheelchair with the same doll riding on her lap. But seeing her with her left arm hanging from a sling and her right leg in a case, it hurt to watch. It wasn't just those either, her other limbs were wrapped up in bandages too. For some reason I could sense her knees and elbows hurt just like mine. I faintly remembered the world of the nightmare I'd had when I collapsed in the bathroom. Just like me, her joints were snapped by that grotesque blob.
Kurokami-san. Kurokami-sanに近寄らない方がいいよ。
I felt like I heard Kiko's voice amidst the crowd. Bad things will happen if you get close to her. I just know it. Let's save. Yes. 1 second. Okay, there we go. She'd been giving me that warning over and over again. Was what happened to me one of those bad things? Kurokami and I were classmates, so it was inevitable we'd meet in the classroom. But if I struck up a conversation with her here, I'd clearly be approaching her proactively.
きっと良くないことが起こるから。
Of course, Kiko wasn't there, but it felt like she was giving me my final warning. If I just kept standing around, she'd probably disappear into the crowd. I still had a chance to stay on this side. Wait, this side? I asked myself exactly what those words that popped into my head meant. Just as Kiko had a sixth sense, so did I. It warned me that if I talked to Kurokami now, there'd be no turning back. She'd already caught my heart. Couldn't turn back anymore. Our destinies were intertwined from the first moment I looked into her eyes. A part of me wanted to save her, while another part of me wanted to know why I started feeling that way. And the latter was the biggest reason why I couldn't get her out of my mind. Kurokami. Who was she? I wanted to know, and then ask her a question. Who are you? Why do I feel this way? I already knew it wasn't something as simple as love. And was it something sinister, just as the rumors said? Have your eyes cursed me? Is that why I can't take mine off you? This sounds romantic.
Kurokami-san.
In the end, I acted before I could come to an answer. Oh, she's so cute! She looked somewhat surprised to see me. I'd never seen such a natural reaction from her at school before.
大丈夫？その怪我。
She was expressionless as always, but not in the same way as at school. She was obviously surprised to bump into me here, of all places.
と言って。
君はススコの子か？
The middle-aged man pushing her wheelchair scowled at me. He was probably her father.
はい。黒髪さんと同じクラス。
トエに、みだりに話しかけないでほしい。
Whoa.
すまないな。トエは世俗の汚れに触れてはならぬ大切な身だ。年相応の生活をさせたくて学校に行かせてはいるが。
Couldn't think of anything to say to that. It was the first time anyone had said something like that to me, and I didn't know whether to be angry or hurt.
お前はいつも
遅い。
消えろ。お前の汚れが。
Whoa.
トエ、無理に喋るな。
はい、父上。
すまないな君。
Bandage Moe.
厳しい言葉は謝る。
いえ、こちらこそすみません。
君が謝ることは何もない。トエを案じてくれるなら、ただ遠くからそっと見守ってほしい。
でも、
These uppity rich people. Something's tormenting her. I wanted to say that, but her father stopped me before I could.
二度とトエに話しかけないでほしい。君に悪気がなくとも、それはこの子を苦しめる。
Normally, someone my age would have no choice but to back down without a word after being told off like that by an adult. However, there was something in me that just couldn't accept that. So I stood my ground.
でも、彼女は苦しんでるんです。僕はそれに気づいてしまったから。彼女。
Toei's father fell silent. That was a sign he was aware of her torment.
世俗の汚れから遠ざける必要があるならば、どうして上沼君を許嫁などに選んだんですか？
お前の知ったことではない。
黒髪さんが心から選んだ男性だなんて、僕には到底信じられません。
You're too late. Those words replayed in my mind once more. Perhaps she meant she'd been forced to bear this fate because no one had noticed her suffering sooner? I wasn't sure about that, but there was no doubt that she was suffering greatly. There was no way she could be happy being treated like a pet by a fiancé she didn't even love. If the rumors Natsu told me were true, yesterday was hardly the first time Kaminuma had been so rough with her. Just by looking at her and her father, it was easy to imagine she was from a strict family where she was in no position to oppose him.
都営の言い名付けは私が決める。お前の知ったことではない。
いいえ、あなたの知ったことでもありません。
何？
黒髪さんの人生は黒髪さんが自分で決めます。確かに彼女は未成年です。あなたの保護下にあるべきでしょう。でも未成年を終えての未来は全て彼女、たとえ父親であろうとも彼女の人生の全てを束縛する権利なんてないんです。
It seemed Toei's father hadn't expected a child his daughter's age to talk back to him like that. He appeared more stunned and angry.
黒髪さん、僕はひょっとしたら全然的外れなことを言ってるかもしれない。でも君が苦しんでいてそれを手遅れに思っていることは知ってる。でもこれだけは的外れじゃなく、
何？
遅すぎることなんて。僕が黒髪さんの力になれるかどうかわからないけど、僕はいつでも味方になるから、それだけは信じて。黒髪さんのお父さん、いろいろと生意気を言ってすみません。それでは失礼します。黒髪さん、
早く言って。
Kurokami hung her head, biting her bottom lip. I didn't know what she was feeling, but my words had definitely gotten to her. And I believed that would save her, or at least serve as a spark of her salvation.
君とはもう話したくない。道を開けてくれ。
すみません。
行くぞ、トエ。
はい。
Toei's father gently pushed the wheelchair past me, only for his daughter to look back at me in that very moment. Her eyes were damp with tears. She reached her trembling right hand out to me.
トエ。
The look in her moist eyes implored me to at least take her hand. And so I did. I wanted to grant her wish, and I didn't need words to do so.
進、黒髪さんには近づいちゃダメ。
Why shouldn't I, Kiko? She needs help, so why shouldn't I? The moment our hands touched, time itself seemed to grind to a halt. The world was frozen in place, almost like the TV known as life had suddenly broken. But the girl before me was real, and so was the warmth of her hand. In fact, this world seemed more like reality. After all, her eyes actually had life to them here. Enough to make me question if the days up until now had all been a daydream. That's just how vivid they were. Kurokami shed warm tears and spoke. Her words were clear and had a deliberate weight to them.
ありがとう、鈴原。
こちらこそありがとう。心を開いてくれてありがとう。
開けなかった。開い。
Kurokami stood up, staggering on her cast-in-case foot. She walked over to me until our chests were practically touching and looked up at me.
お前がいけないんだから。お前が泣いてもいいって。
ちゃんと聞こえていたんだね。
I hadn't said it aloud, but it had reached her.
私、泣くからな。お前は何も意味なんかわからなくていいから、ただ黙って。お前は私に泣かれてろ。
With that word, she gently plunged into my arms. And as she softly clawed at my chest, she burst into tears. I said nothing and let her sob.
遅すぎる。遅すぎる。
どれくらい遅すぎたのかな。
10年遅い。いや、100年遅い。1000年遅い。
そんなに遅くて本当にごめんね。
Such a lady killer.
お前が悪い。全部悪い。
I didn't understand a word she was saying, but I figured allowing her to let it all out would help. She screamed and poured her heart out until she finally calmed down. But then, I finally noticed the abnormality of the situation. For a hospital lobby full of people, it was too quiet. Almost like the place was closed. Though there were still many people there, they gave off no signs of life. Apart from Kurokami, I couldn't even hear any of them breathing. Furthermore, the lobby that had been so bright and clean was all but enveloped in darkness. Like it was after visiting hours where the emergency and night lights served as the only illumination. And since when was it nighttime? Everything outside was dark, like the windows and glass doors had been painted over with ink. It wasn't ordinary darkness either. No matter how late it was, there should have been many streetlights shining brightly. Yet there wasn't a single trace of their light. When had I... Oh, wait. Been brought to this place?
これは一体。
また取り込まれたか。
また
Kurokami's face was still stricken with fear, but she'd already regained her composure. Strangely enough, she didn't seem the least bit perturbed by this abnormal, no, this ominous scene.
気にしなくていい。
気にしなくて。
ああ、無視していればそのうち。
Kurokami spoke apathetically, as though she expected the power to be restored any moment. She found an empty space on the nearly full sofa and sat down.
座りなさいよ。突っ立っていられるとこっちまで疲れてくる。
おう。
Though there were many sofas lying around in the lobby, they were all packed. I was unable to find a seat and was at a loss for what to do when Kurokami noticed my plight.
おう。気が利かなくてごめんなさい。
Kurokami casually pushed away the person sitting next to her. And when they hit the ground, they just crumbled apart, literally. As it turned out, it wasn't a person lying in pieces at my feet, it was a ball-jointed doll. I looked around upon this realization and noticed that every last person in this packed room apart from us had turned into ball-jointed dolls. Even Kurokami's father had turned into one of those dolls, still holding his daughter's wheelchair in the exact same pose as before. She should have been shocked that her father turned into a doll. Yet she paid it no heed at all. I quietly took the seat next to Kurokami as if waiting my turn in line. In all honesty, I wanted to scream from the incomprehensible terror swallowing me whole. But oddly enough, seeing her remaining absolutely calm amidst this madness allowed me to keep my own calm for some reason. Of course, she could have just been bluffing.
その怪我はどうしたの？
ここまでひどいことは初めて。言葉通りよ。意味なんてわからなくていい。どうせその程度の役にしか立たないのだから。
Whoa.
見くびられたくないな。これでも男のつもりなんだけどな。
ひ弱そうなくせに。
こう見えてね、鍛えてるんだ。家が武道の道場をやっててね。小さい頃からずっと修行させられてた。喧嘩の自信はないけど、腕相撲なら大人が相手でも負ける気はしないかな。
意外。力自慢とは。
自慢じゃないよ。冷静に自分の力を理解してるだけだよ。謙虚が過ぎるのはかえって嫌味になることもあると思ってる。
If you got it, flaunt it.
どんな修行を？
木に藁を巻いて拳で打ったりとか。
空手はよくわからない。
鈴原流親善武術って言って似てはいるけど空手とは全く別物なんだ。
興味ない。どうせいくら鍛えたところでお前に打ち砕けるものなど。
何を打ち砕いてほしいの？
My heart.
黒髪さんが何かを打ち砕いてほしいと思ってる。教えてくれないかい？君は遅すぎると言っているけれど、ひょっとしたら僕には間に合うことかもしれないよ。
10年遅い、100年遅い、1000年遅い。
Her laughter was not of delight, but resignation.
無駄だ。
やってみなきゃわからないよ。
お前は藁を巻いた木を打つと言った。その木をお前は拳で倒すことができるというのか。
その気持ちで打っているけどね。
木ごときで遅れを取るひ弱に頼れることなどない。
拳でどうこうできる問題じゃないってことだよね。そろそろ話してくれてもいいんじゃないかな。話すだけなら何も黒髪さんは失うことなんて。
拳でどうにかなるかもしれん問題だ。
誰かを殴れって話？木を倒すよりは簡単そうだけどな。
木すら倒せぬお前に聖堂の壁が打ち破れるか。
聖堂、厚さは？
Yeah, how thick are we talking?
さあ、お前の拳の幅くらいはあるかもな。
さすがに無理だよ。そんな厚さの合金の壁を破るなんて。
Kurokami laughed with resignation as if to say, "Told you."
でも黒髪さんが僕はもっと修行を積ん
Aww.
でいつか必ずそれを僕の拳で打ち破ってみせると。
その修行どれだけかかるやら。
そうだね。その意味では確かに
Aww.
黒髪さんの言う通りだね。10年100年いや1000年は修行しないとダメかもしれないよ。でもそれでも僕が必ずそれを打ち破って。
Let's go! Even I was surprised by that. I'd never said anything so gallant before. It must have been that baseless sense of duty talking. The more I talked with her, the stronger it got. But I didn't care about where it came from anymore. It didn't matter whether it was love, duty, or even a curse like Kiko suggested.
僕は必ず君を助け出す。黒髪さんにとって僕は遅すぎたそうだけど、その壁すらも必ず打ち破ってやるって。
もう遅すぎるのに。
何も遅すぎるもんか。
Aww.
僕はここにいて黒髪さんはここにいる。遅いも早いも関係ない。
鈴原。
At that moment, the silence was suddenly shattered by a ghastly roar. A visceral roar that shook the very pit of my stomach. The ground trembled as I heard something slimy and gooey approaching us. Whoa, whoa, that is loud in my ear.
ちょっと見てくれ。
That is so loud in my ear.
どうせろくなものじゃない。
She was probably right. Whatever that thing was, I needed to know if it posed us any threat. No, that wasn't it. What I really wanted to know was what in the world this place was, and whether I was still sane or not. The thing howled ominously again, And then I remembered exactly what it was. He's back! Baba Booey! The piles of meat trembling as they gave off a rancid stench straight out of a sewer. Yes, it was the giant eerie blob that had broken me and Kurokami's limbs. It was bulging far more repulsively than it had back in my bath. The blob squirmed where it stood, filling the stairwell. It was as tall as the ceiling itself. Despite that, it pulsated as it slowly but surely pushed its way down the stairs. Baba Booey! That nightmare had come back to life with a vengeance. It was searching. That blob was searching for us. Though it was struggling to fit through the stairwell, it wouldn't be long until it got through. And once it did, there would be nothing to stop it. The lobby ceiling was too high to impede it. I had to run. Back in the nightmare, my sense of fear was numbed. It just hadn't felt real enough to warrant it. But this was a different story. The terror was more than present. My legs trembled in fright as the horror before me, I couldn't stop it. I couldn't stop it. Couldn't fight back. However, I knew that I couldn't stay here. I need to get out of here as soon as possible. No, wait, not just me. I have to take Kurokami with me.
黒髪さんは覚えてない。悪夢の中であいつにその手足を折られたんだよ。黒髪さん?
She's just like Katie from Horton Hears a Who. We'd been having a normal conversation just a minute ago, but now it seemed like she'd been turned to a different radio station. Kurokami's eyes were dull and devoid of life. This was bad. She didn't understand what was happening here. She was spacing out just like in class every day. I couldn't ignore her. That blob would never pass up on a toy like her.
ごめんね。ちょっと痛いかもしれないよ。
I grabbed her arm and tried to lift her up. When I did, her cast caught on the doll sitting next to her and we lost our balance. I caught her in my arms and fell to the floor on my back.
ごめん、痛くなかった？
That was a stupid question. She was in no state of mind to communicate after all. But that moment I thought that. The faintest hint of light returned to her eyes. Kurokami was lying on top of me, her face just a hair's breadth away from my eyes and nose.
黒髪さん?
Her sweet breath tickled my nose, and then she kissed me right on the lips. She tried prying open my lips with her warm tongue, which squirmed alluringly.
黒髪さん.
Though I knew the situation was far from normal, a devilish little whisper inside me was telling me to give in to my carnal instincts. Her breath, her tongue, it was all so enticing. No, I couldn't. This wasn't the time for this, but I...
前に会えて嬉しい。遅くてもいい。こうして今があるならどうでもいい。
正気に戻って。今はこんなことしてる場合じゃ。
鈴原。鈴原。レジ。レジ。愛してお願い愛して鈴原
I look around. Kurokami clung to me like a snake. The cast on her left leg fell off, but she paid no heed to it. Her face and breaths became a sweet poison that invaded my brain. All my blood vessels were aching, urging me to give in to this alluring temptation. Whoa. Whoa, 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 shut up, stop. I felt like a fly caught in a spider's web. Kurokami preyed on me as she moaned about love. My veins were throbbing in anticipation for pleasure yet to come. I couldn't fight back the desire screaming at me to give in to her. All of a sudden, there was an unpleasant laugh. The moment she heard it, Kurokami froze completely. She raised her upper half to find out who'd laughed. Isn't that asshole? She looked like a kid who'd been caught with her hand in the cookie jar. Yeah, it is!
鈴原とイチャついてるトエが登場とはよ。どこまでもイラつかせてくれるぜ、この夢はよ。
Kaminuma laughed, an unstable look in his eyes.
よう、鈴原。面食らってるみてえだな。
亀沼。
イカれてるだろ、その女。男と見たら誰でも欲しがる。とんでもねえイカれ女よ。
翔様、違うんです。私には
Whoa.
翔様だけ。
男なら誰でもいいくせによ。てめえは女じゃねえ。
Maybe there was some truth to what he said. After all, Kurokami was clinging to Kaminuma's leg like a dog, and she kept coming back no matter how many times he kicked her. That pitiful sight was exactly like watching a dog begging its masters for scrap.
翔様の愛を。
ついさっきまで鈴原に同じことを言ってたんだ。なあ、鈴原、そうなんだろ。そうなんだよな。
I couldn't think of anything to say to that. The whole thing had lost all sense of reality, resembling something straight out of a nightmare. Yes, that had to be it. This was all just some horrible dream, wasn't it? A continuation of the nightmare I had back in the bathroom. As soon as I realized that, the whole scenery suddenly seemed to warp violently.
翔様じゃないとダメなんです。
Whoa.
うるせえメス犬。
Whoa.
誰彼構わず浴場しやがって。犬なら犬らしくキャンキャン吠えろ。人間様の言葉で喋るんじゃねえ。
I just didn't understand Kurokami anymore. I thought I did just a little while ago, but was that all just part of the nightmare? Whoa, the slimy, grotesque blob showed itself. It had finally made it down the stairs and was heading right our way. The blob had terrified me just a minute ago, but that all suddenly seemed worlds away. Right, because this was all a dream. A bad dream, that's all.
今度はなんだ？ブヨブヨした化け物の登場かよ。これならさっきの女幽霊みたいなやつの方が。
It seemed Kaminuma was already fully aware this was a nightmare. He wasn't fazed by the creepy giant blob in the slightest. Rather, he was downright amused by its bizarre appearance. Kurokami was now completely focused on him. She moaned obscenely as she kept clinging to his leg. The more I saw that, the stupider I felt for even ever being scared in this situation.
しつこいね、あんたも。
Kaminuma shrugged off Kurokami as he hurled obscenities at her. I raised my head to see who he was talking to and realized a sinister shadow had appeared unnoticed. It was dark as a void, but had long hair that reached its feet, giving it the appearance of a woman. Withered branches sprouted out of its head like horns.
上沼君逃げないと。
ほらもう逃げ回るのに使う。どうせ夢の中じゃねえか。ならいっそスカッと終わらせてもらいたいもんだぜ。
Aminuma spread his arms and waited for him. A foreboding shadow also spread its arms and grabbed him. Aminuma tried to act tough, but the pain won over in the end. I clearly heard the sound of a withered branch breaking. A moment later, Kaminuma's upper half snapped like a decayed tree and collapsed backwards with a visceral splash. His head, arms, and elbows smashed into pieces on the floor, scattered into chunks. But his legs remained stand. Despite that, Kurokami just kept clinging to his leg. I felt no fear. I'd already grown numb to such emotions. All I could do was laugh. Couldn't think of any other way to express what I was feeling.
違うよ、鈴原。
Kurokami turned to me as though she didn't notice the shadow that had so brutally killed Kaminuma. It seemed she'd already lost interest in the scattered pieces that used to be him. The change in her behavior was far more terrifying than the monster.
私にはお前しかいないんだ。お前をずっと待っていたんだから。本当にわ
からないよ。僕にはもう本当に。
Still lying on my backside, I scooted away from Kurokami as she slithered towards me. That sight must have been quite saddening for her. Her eyes welled with tears and warped with sorrow. But I couldn't accept her. All I was capable of at that point was laughing in disbelief. Just then, a female shadow, its arms spread wide, lunged towards me.
お前だけを信じて。
Her suggestive words were all nonsense. I was a fool for ever thinking there was some kind of mysterious fate at play in falling for her spell.
黒髪さんなんているわけもない。僕たちはつい先日初めて言葉を交わしたばかりの赤の他人。
鈴原。
ないんだよ。何にもない。
It was just as Kiko said. Should have never gotten involved with this insane girl. Hold on. I need to save. Yes. And then I also need to, Okay, there we go.
私をそんな悲しい目で。
黒髪さんこそどうして僕をそんな悲しい目で見るんだよ。僕にはもうさっぱり。
The quivering blob was right behind me, with a sinister shadow that pulverized Kaminuma right before me. Meanwhile, Kurokami was clinging to my leg. The blob would twist my neck with its hairy arm-shaped lumps, while the shadow would fall upon me.
化け物がよりどりみどりってわけだ。
Which would kill me? The blob? The shadow? No, it was definitely Kurokami. Just then, the shadow and the blob started fighting over me. Kurokami kept babbling her nonsense as she gazed seductively at me. All I could do was keep laughing dryly as if it were the funniest thing in the world. However, my heart ached yet again at the sight of her moist eyes. All of a sudden, I heard a death cry. The fleshy blob descended upon me and smashed my head to bits. It seemed the monster's fight was over. I felt just like Kamenuma. This was all just some repulsive nightmare anyway, so I wanted it to end as soon as possible. When did I get here? No, it was the other way around. Where had I been all this time? Kurokami was still sitting in the wheelchair, her father pushing her along. And I was still standing right in front of them. Had I been standing here all this time? Just then Kurokami stood up on her broken leg.
私にはそして私にしかわからないから。
Kurokami bitterly ground her teeth and wept. I was bewildered, yet my heart ached at her tears once more.
やめてよ。もう僕は君に惑わされたりしない。僕は君に関わっちゃいけなかったんだ。
It felt like I was tearing my own heart in two. Just a short while ago I was telling her how I'd save her. Yet here I was now, cruelly denouncing her. Even so, I just didn't understand what was what anymore. An empty laugh burst out of me, just like in that nightmare.
私がお前を惑わすのはお前のいやこんなせい耐えられない。
黒神さん。
What? It took a few seconds before a woman screamed in shock. After all, there was now a gaping hole in my neck. The empty laugh no longer exited through my mouth. It just leaked rapidly out the new hole in my neck.
血が出てる。
トイ
父上、お許しください。トイはもうこんなせいにもう。
Kurokami tightened her grip on the box cutter in her hand. She didn't look into my eyes.
お前は本当に遅すぎる。だからもう私は楽になっても。
And with that, she spoke no further. Only vivid blood gushed through the new hole squirming on her own neck. I was rapidly losing consciousness. The world was fading into pitch black darkness. I no longer understood anything. My mind couldn't wrap itself around it. My feelings, hers, what had happened, what was happening. I didn't understand any of it anymore. Sorry, Kiko. Should have never gotten mixed up with her. Alright guys, we're gonna save there, and we're gonna stop playing for today because I am getting a sore throat from reading. So we will have to find out next time what's going on. Big stretch. Big stretch. You guys will have to wait until the next part. Ugh. I hope you guys are as invested as I am. I'm quite invested. I'm quite excited to keep going. It really pulls you in. It really pulls you in. Ugh. Next time on Shiki Ball Z. So true. That was a hell of a wild ride. It sure was. Yeah, I'm excited to keep playing. I probably won't pick it back up until I return back from my trip. But yeah, I'm really enjoying. I'm very much enjoying. I'm glad that they gave permission to like let streamers play. I'm Confusion. I'm excited. Okay, guys, I will see you tomorrow for the Evil Within, same time as today, 10 a.m. PST. I wonder how far we'll get tomorrow. We'll just have to see. All right, guys, I'm gonna end here. I don't think I got any super chats or Streamlabs donos, so I won't be reading anything today. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye for now. Oyashiki. Bye-bye.